So I'm going to turn it over to Eve now, who's going to take us on a virtual tour of the teaching garden on Governor's Island. Hopefully that'll start sparking some ideas and questions that you have for us. So we're going to do a virtual tour and then get down to the questions.
All right.
Take
Hi,
it away, Eve.
everyone. I'm Eve. And if you want to hit the next slide, I'll just give everyone kind of a brief overview of what we do at the Teaching Garden on Governor's Island. So this is the entrance of our garden, and we offer, pre-COVID, we offered field trips to the Teaching Garden for New York City students and summer camp groups. And all of the kids who come to our garden would get the opportunity to plant, water, harvest. We would sometimes cook vegetables and do other kind of garden education lessons. And then on the weekends, we would open up our gates to the public, and we had a farm stand where we sold all of our produce, which was mostly vegetables, herbs, and some flowers. And now that we are post-COVID, we have been just growing food to donate, and we did our first donation today to Chili's on Wheels, which was great. We donated over 300 pounds of produce today. So if you hit the next slide, I'm just gonna keep talking about the garden. This is our sign, and you can see under our sign we have some prickly pear cactus, and those are really cool because they're actually native to New York. So if you're in Jamaica Bay, you can find some cactus like that. On the next slide, as we move through the garden, you'll see our outdoor kitchen, which is built from a reused storage shipping container. And on the left, we have a big solar oven. So it's off right now, but if we turn it on, those mirrors would kind of lift up, and the sun would hit those mirrors and reflect to another mirror under the stovetop, and we could use that to cook. We've cooked eggs with students and potatoes and lots of good stuff. And keep on going through the slideshow. Here is our main garden, inner garden area. So here, this was the first part of the garden that we built, and it was designed with kind of teaching in mind. So the educators can stand kind of in the middle there, and our students can be all around the outside and can kind of get an up close view of our plants and kind of some hands-on growing stuff. And in the back there, there's our hoop house. So that's a passively like warmed greenhouse. So it's just warmed by the sun, and the plastic kind of traps the heat in. On the next slide, we have, I think, some close-ups of our vegetables. So here's a tomato plant in a tomato cage, and next to it you can see a marigold. So we do in the inner garden, we mix vegetables and flowers in our beds, and it's called companion planting. So marigolds generally keep pests away. And then this is a photo of some spinach, which is one of the things we harvested today for our donation. On the next slide, we have some of our fruiting bushes and trees. So in the front, we have some blueberry bushes, and in the back, we have some apple trees. You'll notice that all of our beds are covered in straw, and we put that there in the fall at the end of the season to kind of insulate the beds a little bit in the winter and to keep them nice and moist, so it kind of traps some water in there. And also you'll notice the apple tree on the right is a little funny looking. So that's called a grafted apple tree, and it's espaliered, the way the branches are, they're trained to grow that way. It kind of looks like an E and a backwards E. And what's cool about that tree is it's actually 6 different varieties of apple growing on one tree. And this is how most commercial apple farms grow apples, because it ensures that the apple is like genetically identical. Like if you wanted a certain apple tree, you could take off a branch and stick it on any other apple tree and you would get that exact apple. On the next slide, we have, we're moving into our garden extension. So this is a photo of our bioswale. A bioswale is kind of like a rain garden, but we dug out that whole area and filled it with gravel, and then filled it back with dirt and planted all native perennials. So those are plants that come back every year. We don't have to plant them each year, and they are native to New York. So they grow naturally in New York, and they do a great job of soaking up excess water when it's flooding in the area or rains too much, but if it doesn't rain, they're pretty drought tolerant. Behind that, you can see our aquaponics unit, and aquaponics is kind of an alternative way to grow food. So this is a really big version of aquaponics, but you can do it. We've seen classroom versions of aquaponics. What it is on the top, there are grow beds with a grow medium. So we have little kind of pebble-like things in there. It's not grown with dirt. And then inside is some big fish tanks, and we have tilapia fish in there. And the system is kind of a big cycle. So the fish eat and then they poop, and their wastewater is sent up to the top and is used to provide nutrients for the vegetables, and then the water kind of filters back down a little bit cleaner for the fish. On the next slide, we have a view of our garden extension. So as compared to the inner garden where we have kind of a mishmash of things growing in each bed, out here it's more farm style with long 50-foot rows, and in each row we have one type of vegetable generally. And in the back you can see our newest addition to the farm, which is a big greenhouse. It's not quite finished yet. We need to put some doors on, but soon we're hoping to get that up and running. Yep, on the next slide we have just a nice aerial shot of the garden, and this is kind of midsummer, so you can see everything is growing really big and full. On the very left we have some strawberry beds, which is another thing we donated today. It's strawberry season, so right now we have tons of strawberries. The next slide we have another aerial shot, I think, of the garden. In the back you might notice the structure. That is a shared education structure that the island built for us. So we share it with Earth Matter, who is one of our neighbors. It's just kind of like an indoor classroom we can use. On the next slide, we have just one more shot. It's such beautiful space, so we wanted to put lots of shots of our garden. And you can see in the bottom there is a rainwater harvesting system. So all of the water that falls onto the roof of that shade structure fills up into that rain barrel, and we can use that water to hand water our plants. On the next slide, we have our flower garden. So this is just kind of a mix of some wildflowers. It's very beautiful this time of year. And on the next slide, we have some action shots. So like I said before, we work with New York City school students. So these are some students doing something with a plant. I'm not quite sure, but maybe they're learning about the roots or how to plant something. On the next slide, we have some more action shots. So these kids are getting a chance to harvest some, it looks like microgreens that they'll probably use to make a little garden snack. On the next slide, we have some older adults. So we don't just work with children, we also work with some senior centers, and these adults are getting a chance to harvest herbs to make a herbal tea bag. On the next slide, we have some more kids showing off our beautiful garden signs, and it looks like they're doing a scavenger hunt. So we do some fun stuff like that with kids too. And I think we're almost done. On the next slide, that might be it, yeah.
Awesome, cool. Thanks for taking us to the teaching garden virtually. A question that came up a couple times is, can people visit in person right now?
No, unfortunately, the entire island is closed to the public due to the coronavirus, but yeah, so not right now, but hopefully someday soon.
Gotcha. All right, I'm gonna start throwing out the questions. If anyone here is ready to take them on, just raise your hand or unmute your mic. So someone has a question about cabbage moths. Do you get them, and what do you do about them? Chloe, go for it.
Yes, we do get cabbage moths. I feel like any flying pest is a little unavoidable. But the cabbage moths themselves don't actually damage the plants. It's the caterpillars after they lay the eggs. So those cabbage worms are the ones who are eating the holes in your plants. And Generally, we kind of let them be. They'll just eat a few holes in the plants, but they don't really transmit any diseases or anything like that that will kill the plant. We do, if we have a bad infestation where they're eating the majority of the leaves, we'll just hand pick them off. At the teaching garden, we get to feed pests like that to the chickens. In your situation, you might just need to remove them from the plants and dispose of them.
Awesome. All right, the next question we have is it necessary to thin all herb seedlings? Do you have to do that for all of your herbs?
I'll take that one. So it's a good idea to thin seedlings. When we first start planting, we start planting by seed. You actually want to overplant. You want to put more seeds in your pot or your tray or in the ground than you need, because you don't know how many of them are going to germinate. And then once they've germinated and once the seedlings have started to come up and you have a sense of how many have emerged, you want to thin them so that they have a little bit of space, so that as they get bigger, they'll have room to spread out. We kind of joke at the teaching garden that that thinning the seedlings is one of the more difficult things we have to do, because you put all this love and care into planting your rows, and then one day you have to come and you have to pick your favorite seedlings, and the rest of them get sent to the compost pile. So it's a hard day, but it's just part of the job.
Understandable. All right, someone has a question about how to stake their indoor plants. What kind of material can you use to stake an indoor plant? Their question was specifically about an orchid.
I'll take that question. So you can really use anything to stake an indoor plant. If you have bamboo sticks, you can use those, or you can just find any kind of branch or stick that's relatively straight from outside. You can even use like a barbecue skewer. Really anything that's about the same height as the plant and sturdy and able to stick into the soil is good for a stake.
Awesome. Although we might all need our barbecue skewers this summer for barbecues. Another question someone has is about humidity for indoor plants. If they feel like their indoor plant isn't getting enough humidity, what can they do to increase the humidity? And they even asked, can you buy like a humidifier to put in the room, which I've actually done that before. I have a cold humidifier that I've used before.
Yeah, I think there's a couple options. So if you're growing the plant indoors, probably one of the easiest things to do would be to enclose the plant in some way. So you could put, some clear plastic around it, loosely, I should say. You don't want to put like wrap it tightly. You want to loosely wrap it. And what that will do is that'll trap some of the moisture that is evaporating. Another option is the humidifier, as Laura mentioned. And if you're growing outside, like in past seasons, we've grown tropicals in our high tunnel in our greenhouse. You're likely going to have a lot of humidity if you're growing outside in an enclosed space. But if you need to add to the humidity, you can always put out buckets of water, and that'll evaporate over the course of the day.
Very cool. We also, on our distance learning site, we have a resource on how to build your own tiny greenhouse. So if you want to have indoor tiny greenhouses, you can look up how to do that. And it involves upcycling materials like soda bottles or plastic bags and things like that. Our next question is, someone has noticed moss on top of soil in gardens, and why is the moss there, and how does it affect the plants?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with vegetable gardening, we don't tend to want to have moss in our beds, because moss indicates that there's likely an issue. Either the soil is too damp, it's too moist, which could be the result of soil that just doesn't have enough drainage, or it could be the result of soil that is getting watered too often. Moss can also indicate that there's something off about the pH. Most of the vegetables we grow, we want to have them be kind of in the mid-range of the pH. And moss indicates that the pH in the soil actually could be too high. moss also likes to grow in soil that is kind of lacking in nutrients. So it could be an indication that you might need to add some compost or some other amendments to get the pH up. What I would do is, if you are finding that there's a lot of moss growing in your bed or in your pot or whatever you're growing in, I would maybe do a soil test and just get a sense of what's going on with the soil, and then you can take the appropriate remedies.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone here knows about bokashi. I think that's the indoor composting system. Personally, I know hardly anything about it. I don't know if anyone here does.
I'm not that familiar with that method either, but whoever asked that question, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Earth Matter. They're a nonprofit in the city that focuses on composting. They also happen to have an education site right next to the teaching garden. And in past seasons, they have practiced a handful of different types of compost methods, including bokashi. And so I think they could really speak to that. They're also just amazingly, they're just really, really into compost and love to answer people's questions and encourage composting. So.
All right, that sounds great. Someone is asking, what's the difference between fertilizer and compost?
I can take that one as well.
Go for it.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So probably the simplest way to answer that question is fertilizer is anything. It's sort of it's a broad term that means anything that is adding amendments to the soil. So obviously, when we grow plants, they need a variety of different nutrients. Vegetables in particular, need a lot of nitrogen, for example. So a fertilizer is just is anything that we're using to sort of add those nutrients to the soil. In conventional agriculture, which is to say the agriculture that's practiced most commonly around the world, fertilizers are often made of synthetic materials, or they're made of materials that have been mined. And in general, like, we kind of advocate steering away from those for various health and environmental reasons. If you buy a bottle of like Miracle-Gro, for example, that's a fertilizer that's primarily composed of synthetic elements. And Miracle-Gro, I think on the bottle they promise like your vegetables will be 4 times larger than if you don't use this, and that's the result basically of adding a high concentration of those amendments. So that's generally, when people talk about fertilizer, that's what they mean. Compost is another way that you can amend the soil. Compost is the product that you get after organic material has decomposed in using a variety of different methods. And it's really we like to call it a soil conditioner. It's something that you add to your soil that helps replenish nutrients in the soil, but it does it in a way that is more ecologically sound. It's also, we think it's an important part of gardening because it's continuing the natural cycle. Compost is made of material that has been diverted from a landfill and allowed to break down and then return to the earth. So there's a lot of benefits. So our preference is to use compost. We find that is more than adequate for maintaining the fertility of our beds.
Awesome. And if anyone has more questions about compost, Kate's workshop on Wednesday goes into a lot of detail about compost. So that's great info. So this is a question from someone who has limited space for planting and gardening at home in New York City. And they're asking, when we're allowed out, where can we go to get involved with planting, volunteering, and gardening? So I guess once things open back up again. Yeah.
That's another great question. So one of the programs that Grow NYC has, our greening program, works to support community gardens across the city. So if you're not affiliated with a school, your best bet is to reach out to whatever community garden might be in your neighborhood. Green Thumb maintains a list of gardens that are community gardens, and there's a number of other resources online where you can sort of identify which garden is a community garden, and then from there it's a good idea just to reach out to them. I will say that most gardens in the city, while very open to having folks join, it's a good idea to recognize the work and the effort that those gardeners have already put into that space, and you should expect to put in a little bit of work in the garden before you're necessarily given your own space. That's sort of the rule, I think, among most community gardens in the city.
Awesome. And then during times when coronavirus is not an issue, the teaching garden is also open for volunteer hours, correct?
In the past, yeah, we've had volunteers drop in on the weekends. Okay. We're kind of trying to figure out what that's going to look like given the state of the world these days, but we hope to be able to host volunteers in the future.
Gotcha. So this one is asking questions about plants that do well in full shade. So what kinds of things do you plant if you don't have as sunny a spot? We went over a couple of things in the first day of the beginner garden intensive. I know mint is always an interesting one, and you can actually get a lot of different varieties of mint: spearmint, apple mint, chocolate mint, orange mint, pineapple mint. So you can actually have a full-on mint garden. I think hostas are pretty good in the shade if you're looking for landscaping, and a lot of native plants also, like native grasses and ferns. I don't know if anyone wants to add in some things.
Yeah. So we have a native sort of forest floor garden that is primarily in the shade. And Chloe, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but we've planted it a few years ago, and it's really gotten quite full. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chloe.
Off the top of my head, I don't know specific plants in there. I know we have some things that are medicinal, like St. John's wort, and as well as some that I believe have like edible parts to them, but they're not edible garden plants in the traditional way that we would think of, like things that you would put in a salad or cook for dinner. But they're definitely beautiful, and there's a lot of like color and texture in there, and they can really brighten up the space.
Awesome, thank you. So I just noticed it's 2:30, but we have a lot of questions we haven't gotten to. So I think we're going to hang around for a few more minutes if you want to stick with us. I'm going to keep going with just a few more questions. So the next one is about ground cover. So they're looking for an edible ground cover that is not grass because they're allergic to grasses. So what's some other kinds of ground cover?
I can think of two really fun ones that we have at the teaching garden. Peanuts are a really cool ground cover, and they're pretty low maintenance. We stick them in the ground, literally stick a peanut in the ground, a raw one, and leave them until like November. And you'll get to harvest peanuts at the end of the year, which is really cool. And the other one is chamomile, which has pretty flowers, and it'll spread slowly across your space.
Yeah, and if you're not looking for an edible ground cover, there's a lot of wildflower mixes that are really pollinator friendly, and that's a really important thing to have here in the city in particular. Or you could just go with something really simple like clover, which will absolutely cover your ground and provides just wonderful food source for bees and other pollinators.
Yeah, on that topic, someone is interested in creating a cutting flower garden, so a garden to make cut flowers. What do you guys have in your garden, and what would you recommend them to plant in that flower space?
We kind of go in two different directions. One is what Sean was talking about, which is like these pollinator mixes that we get, and that's like a pre-mixed seed. And they make specific ones that they sell. Like we get them from Johnny's that are like specifically for bees or for butterflies or for different types of soil or amounts of sun. So those are really easy and they take a few years to establish, but then you'll just have like, they're designed to always have flowers blooming throughout the season. But if you're looking for like specific cut flowers, we really like to grow zinnias, which also they're branching, so you can keep harvesting from them, and they come in all kinds of colors and sizes. It's a really good one to start with.
Awesome. This one is a super important question. How do I keep cilantro from bolting? I think Eve did, she knows you did a resource on how to prune your herbs with basil, but it's similar for cilantro, right?
Yeah, definitely trimming back. So just like pinching off cilantro leaves. If you notice that it's starting to flower, and you can kind of tell with cilantro, when it's flowering, the leaves are a lot thinner and kind of skinnier looking. So just pinching that off when you see it, but it's kind of hard sometimes. So cilantro bolts because of the heat. So if it's really hot, there's not really a lot you can do about it besides just cutting it back every time you see it.
Awesome. So someone has Swiss chard that seems to get moldy. What do you recommend to try to prevent mold from getting on Swiss chard?
I can take that. I don't think we've ever run into mold on Swiss chard in the teaching garden, but generally if a plant is getting moldy, it's like it's an indication that it's getting too much water. And then mold will form sometimes on plants when they're under stress. So either that's the result of, like I said, too much water or not enough water, or there's a nutrient issue. They're not getting the right nutrients, or it's too hot. But I wonder too whether what they're seeing is mold or whether they're seeing, there's a number of different viral and fungal infections that plants can get, and some of them can appear like mold. So it might be worth, you know, you could certainly, if you have a photo of it, I'd be happy to take a look. You know, you can send it to us after this. We can confirm if that's mold or if it's something else.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always hard to tell without the picture, but those are some good suggestions. This next question is about coffee grounds and what plants benefit from coffee grounds. And I think Kate might have mentioned coffee grounds in her composting workshop as well, but they do have some cool nutrients that you can add to plants. I don't know if anyone wants to elaborate a little. If not, that's okay. All right. I know I've actually just sprinkled some coffee grounds on plants just to add a little bit of a boost to the soil.
Yeah, I think the really acidic plants like the coffee grounds. So if you have like acidic plants, they might like the coffee grounds, and other people use coffee grounds to get rid of cutworms. So there are a couple of different uses. So just kind of understanding what's the makeup of your plant before you drop some coffee grounds on it.
Cool. All right, so I think we're just gonna end because we're running out of time with one more question. Oh, someone also put in the chat, coffee grounds work well for blueberry plants. So that's good to know. But this last one, I'm gonna crowdsource it to all of you here in the chat today, but I thought it was a great question that someone had about where can people keep learning about botany and gardening. They're wondering if the teaching garden is also a resource for adults or just for youth. And then if we have any suggestions, some of our awesome partner organizations, maybe that they could check out their sites. So kind of think about those who you want to recommend. I would say sign up for our newsletter because we highlight all of our partner organizations around New York City. But some places to get started is like Brooklyn Botanic Garden, Bronx Green Up, New York Botanic Garden. They all have a bunch of resources online, as do we on our Grow NYC distance learning site. Does anyone want to add some things to that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the teaching garden is usually open to the public during the spring, summer, and much of the fall. Right now, it's on hold. But as soon as Governor's Island opens, then we will also be open. And we host, we're open to the public on weekends, so you can come in. And we love to answer your questions. But we also just love for folks to get a chance to get out of the city and explore our garden. We have self-guided tours. We have, we do workshops. We have a whole host of different botany and horticulture related activities for families and for anyone and everyone. So keep an eye on Grow NYC's website. As soon as we're open, we'll make sure to send that info out.
All right, that's awesome. So that was our last question for today. Chantel, can you bring us to the next slide, please, just so we can sign off to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week for our first virtual beginner gardener intensive. Later today, you will receive the follow-up email with all the links you need. Our next workshop is Wednesday, June 24th, and you can sign up for that on Eventbrite. Check out all our resources on grownycdistancelearning.org. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions, but a lot of the info that people were asking about, we have a whole bunch of posts that you can find that info in. Also, if we didn't answer your question, you can email us at growtolearn@grownyc.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed the workshop and want to keep supporting our work, please consider making a donation to Grow NYC. Any amount is always appreciated. And special thank you to the Teaching Garden staff, our special guests for today, and to all of you for joining. We look forward to seeing you on the 24th and throughout the summer. Thanks, everyone. Bye.